A very good morning. Thank you for tuning in to this edition. We begin first up with a statement that's coming in from the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who says that Russia has tested a new intermediate range missile in a strike on Ukraine on Thursday and even warned that Moscow could use it against countries that have allowed Kiev to use their missiles to strike Russia. Putin said in a nationwide TV address that Russian strike on Ukraine on Thursday came in response to Ukrainian strikes on the Russian territory with US and UK missiles earlier this week. The Russian leader even declared that Russia would issue advance warnings before strikes on other countries to allow civilians to evacuate safely, further warning that US air defense systems wouldn't be capable of intercepting Russian missiles. So a stern warning that's been issued by Russian President Vladimir Putin to the NATO countries against supplying arms to Ukraine. Let's listen in to some excerpts from Putin's address to the nation last evening.
В ответ на применение американского и британского дальнобойного оружия 21 ноября текущего года российские вооруженные силы нанесли комбинированный удар по одному из объектов оборонно-промышленного комплекса Украины. Разработка ракет средней и меньшей дальности осуществляется нами в качестве ответной меры на планы США по производству и развертыванию ракет средней и меньшей дальности в Европе и Азиатско-Тихоокеанском регионе. Полагаем, что США совершили ошибку, разрушив в одностороннем порядке в 2019 году под надуманным предлогом договор о ликвидации ракет средней и меньшей дальности.
So there you heard the statements coming in from Vladimir Putin saying, rather confirming that Russia has tested a new intermediate range missile in a strike on Ukraine's city, Dnipro, further warning that Russia could use it against countries that have allowed Kiev to use their missiles to strike Russia. This address by Putin comes a day after Russia released its updated nuclear doctrine, warning NATO that Russia will not hesitate in using nuclear weapons against countries who are aiding Ukraine in its attacks on Russia. And let's also tell you about that doctrine that's been released by Russia, in which Putin has said that, as we told you, Russia will not hesitate in using nuclear weapons. But for now, let's also tell you about the crisis in the Middle East, the conflict in the Middle East, rather, after Israel banned the main UN agency providing aid to Palestinians. People in Gaza remain at risk of dying from famines. Israel's failure to obey American law leaves it vulnerable to severe consequences. We get you the details in this next report.
As Israel-Hamas war shows no sign of a ceasefire, and Israel bans the main UN agency providing aid to Palestinians, Gaza remains at an imminent risk of dying from famine. Arguments erupted in Senate over blocking of sales of offensive weapons to Israel.
Madam President, I would also point out that poll after poll shows that a strong majority of the American people oppose sending more weapons and military aid to fund Netanyahu's war machine. And I would also mention, interestingly enough, but according to a poll commissioned by J Street, this is a pro-Israel organization.
They were soon rejected by other senators.
Yes, we can. But now's not the time to send this signal. This signal will be seen by the enemies of Israel and the enemies of peace as if they just stick with it, they will win.
This comes after a 30-day deadline from the Biden administration to Netanyahu's cabinet over the mistreatment of Palestinians in Gaza. The Biden administration has intensified its warnings and appeals to Benjamin Netanyahu. They have urged Israel to do more to protect civilians from airstrikes and other attacks, as well as to allow more aid to reach Gaza.
partnership should be a two-way street, not a one-way blank check. And at a minimum, the Netanyahu government should comply with American law, as we've talked about today. And when they're not, we have an obligation to the American people and American taxpayers to make sure that we withhold that support until Netanyahu comes into compliance.
Israel's failure to increase its humanitarian efforts in Gaza leaves it vulnerable to severe consequences.